Whitney Young Jr.'s parents, Whitney Sr. and Laura, met and married in 1914 on Lincoln Ridge, just a short distance from Simpsonville. They graduated from Lincoln Institute in 1916. Whitney Sr. returned the next year as a teacher. World War I was underway and the U.S. Army drafted Whitney Sr. He served with the Black Buffalo Soldiers. This unit wore a buffalo patch on their uniforms and helmets. In the European theater, they fought with the French and received accolades for bravery and success under fire. After receiving an honorable discharge, Whitney Sr. and Laura came back to Lincoln Ridge. Whitney at first was an engineering instructor and then was promoted to head administrator. Laura gave birth to their three children, Arnita, Whitney Jr., and Eleanor. Whitney Sr. embraced Lincoln's mission of vocational training for young African Americans to reduce friction between the races. Similar to the purpose of Booker T. Washington's vocational education curriculum at Tuskegee, Lincoln Institute depended on white support and prospered under Young's leadership. Whitney Sr. became known as the apple of his mother's eye. Simpsonville's white postmistress taught Whitney Jr. to read by age 4. His parents sought and were granted permission for Whitney Jr. to enroll at the previously all-white Simpsonville Elementary School for grades 1 through 4. For grades 5 through 12, Whitney Jr. attended the all-black Lincoln Model School. He graduated as valedictorian in June 1937. Whitney Jr. matriculated to Kentucky State University in September. KSU President Rufus B. Atwood was a role model. Young observed Atwood using his skills of negotiation to maintain educational funding from the almost all-white state legislature. Another notable influence on Whitney Jr. was Dr. Cheney, his history professor. Dr. Cheney instilled in Young an appreciation for the importance of our U.S. constitutional creeds and how the 14th Amendment was to give all Americans equal protection. Dr. Cheney taught his students about Jim Crow laws and how vigilante terrorism created barriers for citizens of color. Young participated in many activities at KSU: Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, junior class president, intramural basketball, and football manager. He met Margaret Buckner there. Margaret served as president of her sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, secretary of the student council, and editor of the school newspaper, the Kentucky Thoroughbred. Margaret, an English major, edited his term papers and later on his speeches. Whitney Jr. graduated in 1941 and Margaret graduated a year later. When he came back to Shelby County, he took note of Jim Crow laws. He had to sit in the segregated theater balconies, go to colored-only restrooms and water fountains, and visit public restaurants via the back door. As World War II dragged on, Whitney enlisted in the Army Reserve on July 22, 1942. In 1943, active Army duty took him into an engineering training program. The Army sent him to MIT to study electrical engineering and afterwards to enter an all-black combat engineers battalion, building roads and bridges. While on furlough, he married Margaret on January 2, 1944. In the next year, as a sergeant in all-black anti-aircraft battery, Whitney earned 3 Bronze Stars. His forte? Settling disputes between black soldiers and their white commanders. I grew up with the belief that all human beings had inherent decency. When I saw problems, I saw potential too. Whitney convinced white officers to treat black soldiers with more respect and to tolerate black soldiers dating European women. Whitney, because of his Army experience, now knew that he could move blacks beyond Jim Crow institutions and practices toward broader opportunities. After his discharge, he applied to study social work at the University of Kentucky. The all-white University of Kentucky denied him admission. He and his wife decided that Minneapolis would be their home after the University of Minnesota accepted both of them into their social work master's programs. Margaret pursued a master's in psychology and prepared for the arrival of their first child, Marcia. Whitney, using the GI Bill, enrolled in the University of Minnesota School of Social Work. One teacher that shaped Whitney's outlook, Juscela Konopka, had been an inmate in a German concentration camp, making her a foe of racism in any form. The local Twin Cities Urban Leagues trained Whitney and other social work students in field assignments. Young used his communication and mediation competency to facilitate commitments to the Urban League from both the white elites and from the black community's leaders. Young persuaded key members of both groups to join the Urban League board. Young continued to educate his white supporters about the connection between poor housing, no garbage pickups, lack of street maintenance, police brutality, and the high incidence of crime, illness, and delinquency in the slums. He called out realtors on redlining, the steering of buyers to neighborhoods based on race. He connected the dots with realtors, showing them that racial selectivity in home sales perpetuated poverty and slum conditions. He promoted free enterprise as the main tool in solving housing and economic problems. He enlisted black-owned savings and loan companies to add low-interest loans to the pool of insured FHA mortgages. Those strategies helped minimize the call for more public housing. Another successful tactic Young used with white business and educational leaders was the importance of providing opportunities for black GIs. How can we discriminate against black soldiers and their families when we've asked them to risk their lives in Europe, Japan, and Korea? Foxholes have no color line, and schools, neighborhoods, restaurants, and employers shouldn't either. He ascended to the top of the social work profession after receiving the Florin Lasker Award in 1959. His published work, The Role of Community Organizer in Desegregation, helped persuade many in the social work profession of the notion that social workers can become primary agents in promoting racial equality and justice. Young, along with John Lewis, Martin Luther King Jr., James Farmer, Roy Wilkins, and A. Philip Randolph, became known as the Big Six of civil rights. Each of the six had a distinct role. King, the voice, mobilized tens of thousands for direct action. Young, the corporate strategist, raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Roy Wilkins secured voting rights through the NAACP. John Lewis and SNCC rallied people in the streets. The Urban League named Young as their CEO in 1961. Young and the Urban League's centrist reputation drew support from powerful whites as well as from middle and working class blacks. Young and A. Philip Randolph assured President Kennedy that the 1963 March on Washington would be void of chaos. Their leadership helped deliver on that promise when 250,000 people came to the Capitol for a peaceful march. Whitney Young Jr. became a strategist for the African American Institute. They proposed to have annual exchanges between American corporations and their African counterparts. On the last day of their Lagos, Nigeria conference in 1971, Young and a few other conference attendees decided to visit Tarkwa Beach on the Atlantic Ocean for a swim. Young had become a strong swimmer while a student at KSU and felt confident in venturing out into the rough surf. Riptides took him out. Swept out some distance from the shoreline, he signaled for help, but drowned before anyone could rescue him. President Nixon dispatched an Air Force transport plane to bring his body home. His family chose Greenwood Cemetery in Lexington for his burial. President Nixon delivered a graveside eulogy. What is the legacy of Whitney Young Jr.? His actions, writings, and reputation galvanized support for the ideas of economic and social integration. In 1969, Young proclaimed that blacks should develop the power that America respects, take economic control of our neighborhoods, and mobilize our resources for collective uplift. He persuaded some of the wealthiest white philanthropists to support the Urban League's goal of black economic integration. Blacks needed to create their own wealth through gainful employment and through wise investment, especially in black-owned corporations. I'm John Graham, and I'm a proud member of Shelby County, Kentucky Historical Society.